got a broom, he ain't cleaning his room, get the drop and he's sweeping it up. Ay, she wanna fuck with a tug, she bring her friends, skis in a car. Racks, I can't get enough. Simon says you niggas are blocked. Ay, and now.
Yo guys, what's up? And today we're going to be doing my League 1 team of the season so far predictions. I did make these cards the same time as the Serie A ones, but I decided to release them on today because it's nearer the actual event this Friday. And yeah, let's get into this. At number 1, we've got to have Neymar. Of course, he's one of the best players in the world, has been for a while. He did get 13 goals and 6 assists in 15 games this season, which is incredible. At number 2, I've got to pick Angel Di Maria, the most assists in Ligue with 14 this season. But unfortunately, he'd probably have a 2-star weak foot, so he wouldn't be as expensive as his foot birthday. Next, we have Benedetto. Now, I think he defo deserves one because he was the joint top scorer of 18, joint with Mbappe. I think he's one of the most broken cards to ever be in FIFA. Next, I've given Mbappe a 99 rated card because of his 18 goals this season. I think he'd be top 3 best players in the whole game. Next, I've picked Dimitri Payet. Now, I think he'd be a very meta card in game. He'd have very high passing, dribbling, shooting, physicals and shot, which would be very good for a powerhouse cam. Next, I've picked Idris again. Now, I think he'd be a very meta CDM in the game. He'd have very good passing, pace, dribbling, and incredible defending and physicals. The only problem with him is he'd probably have 3-star, but he'd be very good CDM regardless. Next, I've picked Marquinhos. Now, I think he'd be a very good centre-back. He'd have incredibly high pace and immaculate defending physicals, good dribbling and passing. He'd be a perfect centre-back and he'd get loads of links. For the first goalkeeper spot, I have picked Keylor Navas. Now, I think he was up there with the top clean sheets and saves this season in Ligue, and I think he'd be very good. He'd have incredibly good diving and reflexes. He'd be a very good keeper. For the next goalkeeper, I've picked Lecomte. Now, I think he'd be an okay keeper in game. He'd have decent stats, but I think goalkeepers will be mostly used for SBC follow. Next, I've picked Verratti. Now, he had a pretty good season this season. I think he'd be pretty decent. He'd have very, very good dribbling and passing, but he'd be more SBC fodder. Next, I've picked Thiago Silva. Now, I think he'd be a pretty good centre-back. He'd have very, very good defending and physicals. He'd have okay pace. If you put a shadow on him, he'd be very solid, and he'd get a green link with Marquinhos. He would also be 400k or less. Next, I've picked Kasper Dolberg. Now, since he left Ajax, he played for Nice and he got 11 goals this season, which is pretty good. I think he'd be mostly a super sub because he's quite hard to link. Next, I've picked Mollet. Now, I think he'd be a very good player in game. He'd be very cheap and he has good dribbling and passing, and he was Montpellier's best player this season. And he will have 4-star. Next, I've picked Benedetto. Now, he was the 5th top scorer in Ligue this season with 11 goals, joint with Kasper Dolberg. I think he'd be pretty decent with very good pace and shooting. Next, I've picked Victor Osimhen. Now, I think he deserves one. He was the joint 5th top scorer with 18 goals. His card would be absolutely incredible, but he wouldn't be that expensive because of his club and nation. Next, I've picked Renato Sanchez. Now, I think he'd be a very, very good centre mid. He'd be an absolute powerhouse with all-round amazing stats in the Hullet gang, and he'd have green links to Osimhen. Next, I've included IOR. Now, I think he'd be very, very incredible centre mid. He'd have very good dribbling. He'd also have very good shooting, passing and pace. He'd be an incredible centre mid. He'd be in the Hullet gang with all-round amazing stats. Next, I've picked Sarabia. Now, I think he'd be a pretty decent cam with very good dribbling and passing, decent pace and shooting. I think he'd be quite cheap because he's not amazing, but he'd be a very good cam. Next, I've picked Rafinha. Now, I think this guy would be a very good pack seller with those incredible pace, dribbling, shooting, passing and physical stats. He wouldn't be too expensive because of his club, and he'd get loads of links with Brazilians. Next, I've picked Icone. Now, I think he'd be an incredibly good cam. His future scars was broken as it is, with very good pace, dribbling, passing, shooting. He'd get loads of links with French players, and he'd be an immaculate cam, one of the best in the game. For an easy rivals objective player, I have picked Camavinga. Now, I think he'd be a decent centre mid. He's a future star. I don't think he'd be an incredible card, but he'd be a very well-rounded, cheap sub. Now for a flashback SBC, I would love to see Memphis Depay because his season was cut short with an injury, and I think he deserves this card for his previous amazing cards in previous FIFAs, and he'd be incredibly good. And finally, I've just added this card. I've decided to give this guy, Choya, I think that's how you say his name, a card, because EA are giving moments cards to players who are normally silver cards, and I think he'd be a good choice for his performance this season. Also, the 70% of you that aren't subscribed, what are you doing here? Make sure you do subscribe and click the bell. Hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you did, like, subscribe, make sure to share the video. Check out all my other videos. I've got good ones loading up soon, coming soon. Make sure you follow all my socials, my Instagram, all of that will be in the description. Also, go check out my second channel and like the latest videos. All of these will be in the Linktree link in the description. And peace.
CC on my feet, Macamary, my jeans. Bloody shoes, murder scene, CSI on these streets. Niggas, man, can't compete. I make racks in my sleep. Ain't Halim no week. I've been on Hennessy.